This week we visited the small southwestern Missouri town of Rich Hill, and the reason that I even stopped in this town was because I drove past this enormous coal shovel sitting in this park, and I'm really glad I did because I found a few interesting things in this town. The first thing I found was this 73 cubic yard bucket that came from the Midway Princess coal shovel at the P&M Coal Company. Its name is Big Mouth, and it's been in this park since 1993. This city was established in 1880 because they found coal in the area, and this town grew up in order to support the miners. Hundreds of miners were employed in the mines in the area, and the largest mine was number 15, and it was reported to be the largest mine between the Mississippi and the Rocky Mountains. It had an 85-foot shaft and a 4-foot vein of coal, and the mine produced 85 cartloads a day. The big coal companies began pulling out in 1906, and the town of Rich Hill began to decline. But it's still a bustling little small town, and this park has a few other items, including this much smaller bucket. And then there's this bridge that goes over nothing, but we're going to go over it anyway because it's a bridge. And now that I'm walking over it, I'm thinking that this is something related to the coal mining industry and not an actual bridge. What do you guys think? And look here, we've got a caboose. And not only do I love trains, but I love cabooses. And I've said it before and I will say it again. I would turn a caboose into a tiny house and I would live in it in a heartbeat. So let's go check this one out. This was a really nice city park, but it's time to go check out the building across the street. And it's not marked, but we're going to figure it out because I was incredibly lucky to once again find a Sanborn fire insurance map for this town. But we're even more lucky because they have 5 years worth of maps: 1888, 1893, 1898, 1906, and 1914. And these were digitized by the University of Missouri. And I'm really glad because they were a wealth of information. I found out that as late as 1898, the water supply came from the river. Also in 1898, the fire department had 10 members who were paid $50 each per year, and the streets were not paved, but there was electricity. In 1906, the fire department had 10 members. 5 received $50 a year and were fined $2 for non attendance at each fire. The other 5 received $2 for each fire attended, and there was one night watchman in the business part only. In 1914, the fire department still had 10 men with a paid driver who slept in the building, and they had 2 horses and 1 wagon. There was a fire alarm and a bell on City Hall, and at that time there was 1 day and 1 night policeman, but the streets were still not paved. This is the first map from April of 1888, and you can see right here is the park that we were just at, and there was a cobbler there on the corner and looks like a warehouse. But if you go across the street to the property, there's absolutely nothing there. So let's go see what it's like in 1893. So this map is from August of 1893, and here's the park, and you can see here is the property, and now we have structures. We have a bell tower and another building. The fire department is there, and a calaboose. That's a jail. I thought that looked like a jail. So now we are 5 years in the future to September of 1898, and this is the park, and you can see some warehouse buildings there. There's the railroad. And this is our property. And you can see that those structures have now been replaced with a brick city hall. And there is our jail. Now, if we advance 8 years to 1906, you can see those warehouses are gone. But City Hall is still there. The fire department is on the first floor, and the city clerk's office is also on the first floor. And our jail is still there. This is the last map, and it looks different because the orientation is a little bit different. This is the park, and here is the property that we've been looking at. And you can see now they call it a city jail, and there's the fire department and the city hall and the city clerk's office. And as we were driving out of town, we drove past this very derelict city block, and I had to stop and take a look. This whole block looks like it's about ready to be demolished. It is definitely beyond help. And this is the plight of many of these rural, small downtowns. They've become disused, abandoned, and left to rot. This was once a thriving city block. And as I said before, we have access to 5 years worth of the Sanborn fire maps from 1888 to 1914. And I want to focus on two buildings on this block. This one we'll call the blue building, and this one we will call the red building. And this is how the block looked in 1888 when it was brand spanking new. And you can see right down here is a restaurant and a doctor's office on the second floor. But more importantly, that's a candy store next door. An 1880s rural American candy store. Now, that's a store I'd like to go into. Other businesses on the block were groceries, bakeries, barber shops, a drugstore, a jewelry store, and a couple of saloons or salons. I'm not really sure how you say it. And our first building, the blue building, was one of those businesses. And here it is right here. And as you can see, there are some buildings there in the back. Our other building is right up here, and it is the Masonic Hall. And that really doesn't surprise me because a lot of small town lodges were in very ornate buildings. And this lodge was on the third floor, and the first floor was a general store, and the second floor had stockrooms and offices. Here we are 5 years later in 1893, and as you can see, not much has changed. The blue building is still a salon, but the structures in the back, they're gone. And the Masonic Lodge, well, that's also still there. But I see one glaring omission. Where's the candy factory? It's been replaced by a feed store. That's hateful. Oh, and I just saw this, a sausage factory. Oh, and there is another one. This was a small town. How many sausage factories did you need? Another 5 years have passed, and this is the block in 1898, and there are finally some changes. The blue building, it is now a restaurant, and the Masonic Lodge, well, it is still there. What has changed is this building here on the corner. It used to be a frame structure, and now it is a brick building, and I know that because it's red, and all these red buildings, they are brick, and all the yellow buildings, those are frame buildings. And what I love about this is I love these little details of these windows. I'm assuming that those are windows. Okay, so let's pop ahead 8 years to 1906. And as you can see, not much has changed except for our blue building. It is now a bakery and confectionery, and it has an oven. And this right here is interesting. It says engine dynamo 125 volts. I wonder what that was used for. And as we learned before, the coal company started leaving in 1906, and this block in 1914, it doesn't look affected at all. All the stores are occupied, but I did notice a couple of things. Right here on the corner where the doctor's office used to be, that's now an undertaker, and there were over 200 miners who died in the mining accidents. And then this building right here, it says pool, and I don't really know what that means. Is that a swimming pool or a pool hall? Any guesses? The blue building, it is still a bakery and a confectionery, and it has a bakehouse in the back with an oven. And the Masonic Lodge, like always, it's still there. Thank you all for joining me on my adventure today, and I hope that you learned something or at least enjoyed the video. If you did, consider hitting the like button, and I also hope that you like dropping in periodically to these small rural towns and learning a little bit of their history. I certainly do. And again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye now.